So let's get this going. All right, this I found the best GIF in the world for this. I mean, this is always when I make presentations. It's like 80% of the time is spent searching for GIFs, and 1% of the time is making the actual presentation. So today we are going to be focusing on the topic of balance, like I promised you in December. Are you guys with me? Is everything okay? We have a bit of energy, or we're sleepy as hell? How are we?
I'm sleepy as hell, but I can listen, but not talk too much.
Yeah, we can do this. All right. I support you guys. I understand. Maybe we can even think about the schedule and move our lecture from the mornings. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have so much possibility in my schedule, but if you really would
It's okay, but it was
unexpected.
Yeah, the point that this lecture is unplanned.
That sucks. I'm sorry for that. Thank you for being with me and for plowing it through. So, well, of course, I wish you a great new year. I am very close to you guys, and I mean, I feel very much. I root for you, and I want your success. So, everything stays the same. We're here close. Whatever you need, I want to talk to you. I see your developments, and I think you guys are gonna have great careers and great times. There is no way to have a worse year than 2022. So, well, I don't know. I mean, for some people, it was, of course, worst. Depending on.
I said this every year, so don't say.
Yeah,
like
you're right. It's fucking crazy. It's like the next step will be like some octopus kraken coming out in the center of Moscow and just breaking everything or something. Like, I mean, whatever. But it's just like every year surprises us with the пиздецнess, the level of пиздецнess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about like what are my goals for this year. It's kind of to put you an orientation of the body of work that a person in my situation needs to be handling. So whenever you feel that you have too much work or stuff, you can think like, oh shit, like of course I can do more. Like I just wanted to motivate you. So this year I want to complete the writing of the soundtrack of Freefall. We discussed this a lot, the 75 minutes of original music. I didn't do so much on the December break. I was a little bit resting and calm, but I have like 36 minutes done or something like that, almost 40. I want to complete the mixing of that, then I have to mix that. I want to conceive the live performance of that album, so I want to put together a band that will play that. I forgot in all these times one thing that I need to do, which is to mix my holiday LP. I have to mix my holiday LP. So you see, like we are at this point and we're already talking about 2 albums, like 2 LPs. I want to write a new Lapser on the Sun record, so that's a 3rd LP that I'll be kind of pushing out this year. I want to produce, record, and mix kind of 6 EPs for other clients. So, and I want to produce, record, and mix kind of 2 LPs for other clients. So I would like when this year ends to have done 5 LPs and 6 EPs, something like that. And I want to mix at least 40 songs, like loose little songs. And I want to master at least 50 songs, some little things, and a couple of albums or something. And I want to obtain a commission for a 2nd soundtrack. So that kind of thing puts you on the 2 million ruble kind of like income bracket, sort of. And again, the main reason why I share with you this is so you have an orientation on where kind of things are going to go for you when you're going to be sustaining your family as a sound engineer, you know. Kind of like 4 albums, 6 EPs, and in total you will be involved in the production of like in between recording, production, mixing, and mastering. You will be involved in the production, and that's really normal for me in a year of something like 150 songs, something like that. It's the normal thing. Like you become more productive over time, of course, and you will become more productive over time. Right now, your role as a student and a bit of a younger person is just to fool around, to party a lot, to experiment things, to have a great time, to make new friends, to build new connections. So that's a work, you know, like just to do that, it's a work in itself. And I'm really not joking when I say this, because those relationships that you will build will help you to make your career in the future. So I'm not telling you go and do this amount of work. I'm telling you this is the amount of work that you will need to do to feed the family. So you have an idea of kind of how it looks like the more you're getting there. So do you have any plans for releasing something this year, guys, or it's mostly the uni work, or what are your plans for this year? Let's start with Andrei. You have any special plans or nothing in particular planned up?
Any special? Yeah, I got some. My biggest plan is to finish at least some of my demos with demos that is related to another artist. Like what is collaboration
Da.
songs.
Da.
After this, I want to write an EP
Yeah, great.
for electronic music, kinda
Mm-hmm.
dance music, and I have to start thinking about how to pass the exam for next year. This year,
Ah, shit! You guys gotta do the
Mhm.
No,
Yes,
That's a big deal. That's a big
that
deal.
sucks.
You will
Big
do
pop.
it. It would be okay. Of course, it would be okay.
I don't know.
Of course, it would be okay. You will do it. Yeah, I forgot about this totally. I see. And what about you, Dima? Would you have any plans for this year, if you can talk?
Yeah, I can talk. I don't think I will release something because I'm always how it's called unsatisfied
Ah.
by the tracks that I can write right now. So yeah, I'm not sure I will release something, and too much. I wanna to someday, but this year is too much like in university part and like life part. Too much tasks.
That's great that you put it like that. I mean, that's how because I mean to put these impossible goals is just like it's as good as having no goals at all. So
Yeah.
What you guys have on the university is already quite a lot of. I mean, it should be your main priority right now, just like about the things that you have to do, just to get those projects going. Okay, so thanks. Let's go up. So look at this. Okay, let's focus a bit because I have told you a lot about balance in the past, and we made like a presentation that actually was kind of like very structured, like how do you make a balance, and giving you some set of instructions. We have talked a lot about this, and today we're gonna see balance from the point of view of Mike Senior and many other production famous engineers. And well, the good news is that I'm very, very vindicated by all of this. Like most of the things that I was imagining that should happen, and I reached those conclusions on my own, are confirmed by other people like this. So that's really motivating for me. That it's like it seems like these principles that I myself thought of on my own, of course, are things that it's kind of like Darwinianly everybody arrives to the same conclusions because it's just like the easiest way to work, or the fastest way to work, or the most efficient way to work. So we will see things again that I have already told you in the past, but we're going to see them from a completely foreign point of view of somebody that is totally far away from us. And I'm really happy this confirms the things I was telling you in the past. So check this out. This is so cool. And also, I mean, I hope that I can motivate you to become more minimalistic in what you do when you mix. So the purpose of a lot of mix down processing is simply to resolve conflict between instruments. So that's kind of like a good way to understand what's the purpose of mixing. The purpose of mixing is to resolve conflicts in between instruments. One of the main purposes of mixing. You'll typically find that each new track that you add, when he means track, he's talking about like daroshka, obviously. When you add a new daroshka, you need more processing and processing and processing to squeeze smaller packets in the balance. What this means is like you have a main track that is very loud, like the vocals or something, that is occupying a lot in the center, and then you start working on the guitars, and then you start working on the bass, and then you arrive to the drums. And for example, if the last element that you are gonna mix is gonna have less headroom than the first element that you were mixing, and so you will find yourself having to process very hard things that you add later on in your hierarchy. Do you understand what I mean? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this will have negative effects on the things that you're mixing. You will see. We're gonna explain that later. This is like a bit of an introduction with some quotes, you know. This is so important, guys, and we need to get in the mindset of this. Like, one of the smarter things for a mixer to do is to know when to leave stuff alone. So these guys, pro UK and American engineers, are really super minimalistic in what they do. I understand that this is because their tracking stage is better and they have better tracked material. That's obvious, but as you will see down the road in this presentation, like, most of the things that we sometimes tend to do to something is something that we really don't need to have applied any effects there. Maybe the whole track was okay how it was recorded. And mixing, people when they're mixing, they have a feeling that they have to do something always. You see what I mean? And I want to try to get us away from this mindset. Maybe the best.
I got it, and I actually realized this, and sometimes I don't do anything.
Yes, and you have to have and that's the point of being a professional. It's like you have to have the capacity to understand when nothing needs to be done.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when I see the mixes of the DPO students, I have told you this many times, like, when I see the mixes of the DPO students, it's really remarkable. It's like they put like 20 plugins or something just to kind of like EQ something, and it's really aggressive processing, and they are just in this mindset of doing things, and it's just not healthy. So far, now, like every lecture, this was kind of like the punchlines of the today's lecture that I wanted to tell you, the 3 things that we just read now. So those punchlines are, hey, we want to resolve conflicts between instruments. The more you keep progressing in your mix, the more you're going to have to add more plugins to squeeze more space in your mix for something. And sometimes it's better to leave everything alone. Now, we have, like every lecture, we start...
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
But I just realized the best progression in mixing is understanding of not applying any effects to any track. Do you get me?
Yeah, I mean, just to not do anything, just to put it there.
This is the top progression of mixing.
It's like you go to these courses and go to a bachelor's degree, and in the end, it's like, it's like, fuck, I shouldn't have done anything.
Exactly, yeah.
God damn it. So, okay, this is like always, we have like a summary of the whole course, and I mean, I like to start like this. I'm not going to read it now because we have done it all the time. Every time I put in the end, in purple, I put the things that are the most recent ones that we discussed. So we talked about comping last time we spoke, and how important it is to choose the takes and to compare how things were when you were just had one take and when you make a comping. So yeah, comping is super important. We discussed this, and the arrangement is super important. It's a big part of your mixing process. Like, many of the things that you're mixing are going to be fixed in the arrangement stage. So you see, like, go through your arrangement and try to identify which are of the 3 more interesting things that are happening at any time, and then see how far you can reduce the amount of elements that are happening. And so this is going to be useful. And change section of your track that have similar arrangements. Maybe you can mute some things in the first verse and then make them appear in the second one. And well, it's talking as well. We were talking as well about repetition. Like, if you have a chorus that repeats a lot, like, we shouldn't do this, and that's all clear. Today we want to identify the important considerations to take into consideration. That's great. That's great work from the important factors to take into consideration right at the moment of starting a mix. I mean, we're already, let's mix day number 1. We did 10 lectures of pre-mixing work, you know, and now we are mixing finally. And so we're going to open the discussion of the roles of balance in crafting a mix. We're going to start the process of understanding why we need to apply certain audio processes, and I don't think we will make it there, but I wanted to show something in a Pro Tools project, but I want to finish before 12:30, so we will. So this is kind of how Mike Senior starts the whole thing. So, okay, your project is sort of like there laid out. You have it already going. The timing and tuning gremlins have been banished. So the monsters are away. And you have all the arrangement great. And your faders are pulled to 0. And you're ready to mix. So now what? So many low budget producers don't know how to answer this now what. issue, and that's where we are today. So there is not like a game or like a strategy that many people have or a solid rationale for their decisions. They just start moving randomly up and down, and that makes a very big difference in between a pro and an amateur. So when you see a person that is really like a seasoned or experienced, you will see that it seems like they are kind of like doing something randomly, but they of course have an overarching kind of plan or strategy, and they have developed an intuitive grasp of their mixing workflow. So they're free to jump in between things without losing the plot. You know, they continue in a plot, and the same happens to me when I'm mixing. I'm just kind of like jumping in between many things, but I always am following some sort of plot or like a structure that I have. So this part of the course is designed to help you to understand this non-linearity that happens to a mixing engineer. Jumping in between things, and to try to put it more in a step process so you can understand it and digest it. So the first thing when you're mixing should be to find the balance. So this is kind of like a very basic thing that, you have all your project already ready to go, so what should I start? Should I start by EQing stuff, or should I start by compressing stuff, or should I start putting reverb? What this guy recommends, obviously, is to find the balance first. So it sounds simple, but it's not. And if you get kind of like every important sound clearly audible, then it's gonna be really cool. If you can get it really audible across the duration of the mix, this is what we call a static balance. I'll explain you in a second. Then you have a big part of the battle won. So what is the meaning of this? Imagine that you're in the studio and you're mixing in a console. You put your faders in 0, and then you press play and listen to the audio material. And then you notice that the acoustic guitar disappears in the second prepiev, but it's kind of audible along the way. But there are some elements that you don't need to touch the fader. They're always there in a good audible position, and whatever is happening, you don't feel the need to touch that fader. So that means that that thing is already in a static balance. You just like press play, all the elements of the song are being performed, and you can hear it. You don't feel the necessity for automation. That's kind of what I mean. That's sort of the place where I want to put myself in. So what I mean about that is that I put everything in, all my faders in 0, just play the whole thing and make some trimming of gain for the clips, until I have some like thing that I can hear the whole song fully. And then if I feel that I need to automate something, that's an indication that maybe I need to do audio processing to that track. That's not exactly how I work, guys, because I start putting processing because I'm stupid and in a hurry. I start putting processing before this scheme, before this way of working. But after these readings that I did for this presentation, I'm going to start doing this more. It's like my goal is to achieve a static balance with all the elements of the song before I start really mixing, and then I go and mix. I usually, I was like isolating the vocals alone and then building the whole thing from the vocals downwards, or the most important element downwards. But nowadays I'm going to kind of start with a basic balance of the whole song and see, and because I need to know before I start mixing. This is exactly what I mean. I need to know before I start mixing what are the elements that are going to have problems. And if I do it so in isolation, is really not great. So the first task should be to find the balance, I guess.
Bro, but how can you balance, for example, an instrument that differs in another chord, for example, without mixing?
Well, you will see that there are, what this guy calls balance has...
The gain changing or what?
Has 3 steps. You will see it in a second. What he's calling balance is not just bringing everything to 0 and then see what happens. Like, it's more like making low pass and high passes, making panning, but it's before EQ. Making panning and just putting the things in the right level. And by the way, Dima, do you remember, I don't know if you remember this, that there was always like this conversation between me and Denis Siganov about why do I leave the faders in 0 and then I put a gain plugin at the end of... Do you remember this? Or
Yes, I do.
Today we will hear finally a good answer for that. You will see, like Mike Senior does it in the same way, and you will hear a good answer.
Do you mean 0 faders at 0? You mean DBFS or what?
No. I guess that I mean,
Or
not,
same level? Everything is same level, you mean?
yeah. I mean everything in same level, and
Ah.
I mean everything in the same level. Let me just open Pro Tools 1 second to be able to show some things as we carry on. So it's gonna just be opening for 1 sec, and meanwhile I'll come back here. Hide. Okay, so let's go to building the raw balance, like the moment where we're gonna build the raw balance. So the order in which you're gonna do things can have huge consequence in the final product. So the first thing you need to understand is where to start, and that's very important. And we're gonna get some good insights today about this. You heard from me top-down vocals to drums. These guys do it very similarly, but they do it a bit more sophisticated than what I told you in the past, and I think that that's a really good thing that we have a different point of view. So you need to support the natural flow of the song, what they call the long-term dynamics of the whole song, while preserving the greatest musical intensity of the production's more climatic section. So the meaning of this is like you want your choruses that are larger to be larger than the other choruses. If you want chorus 4 to be the biggest one, it has to be bigger than chorus 3. So there is a good solution for this, which is to work. This is a new thing that I have not told you in the past, and I think that we can start adding this into our thinking. You will have to choose two things when you're going to start. What instrument are you going to start with, and which part of your song are you going to start with? So work on your song sections in order of importance. If your chorus 4 is the mega monster super amazing chorus, you should start by that. And that's something that he recommends it. So imagine that you have a song structure that is kind of like this. So you're going to go straight into here and start here, and then within that chorus 4, you're going to choose one element and you're going to work a lot on that element. So let's say that you're mixing a song with a simple pop structure, like verse 1, chorus 1, verse 2, blah, blah, and then you have a chorus 4. If you want chorus 4 to be the biggest sounding section, which is not an enormously controversial choice, then mix that first. And then I like how he puts it here. Like you have to throw everything at this, including your kitchen sink. That's a very American expression or English expression. Until it sounds amazingly. We are kind of here until it sounds amazingly. And then you reach the limits of your mixing capacities. Get the sweat out of your forehead, and then like, okay, go and adapt the same mix settings to chorus 3, but just make it a little bit less powerful. It should still sound great, but you have to leave room for chorus 4 to sound even better. So you define the importance of each one of these choruses, and after you did this, let's say you did chorus 4, chorus 3, chorus 2, chorus 1, then you can start uniting things. But you have to have clear goals from the start, and that's where we all fail, kind of. Like we start mixing, and we do it a little bit like a process of wandering around, of being lost in the fog, of not having really a structure or an idea. And the most important thing, I think, it would be to listen to the whole thing and think, okay, which one is the main moment and the main element, and then start focusing on that. Won't be able to, yeah, that's okay. Consider it that it is a lot easier to make things sound smaller than bigger. This is really important. So when you make something sound huge, it's easier to scale it down, but it's really hard to make something that was smaller to make it grow. So let me just highlight this with some like underlining or something. Yeah.
Bro, actually, sometimes I do mix like that just because when I have a track to master, I master the loudest part, and because of that, I mix a song from the loudest part.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great
but
thing.
I haven't thought about it from this point of view.
And what about you, Dima? Random or start or order?
Now when I'm understand, let me think how to say this. Before, when I didn't understand anything about mixing and didn't know so many instruments, like plugins and techniques which I can make with mix, I did it randomly. and it was complete mess because I discovered something new that I can create this part bigger, and then so it was completely random. Now, after a couple of years of this mess, when I understand what I can do to make the part big or huge, how would say it in the slides.
That's
I can start with the smallest part,
that.
but I understand that I can't use some instruments here because I will use them because I will use it in the most biggest part later. So I do not create like some crazy panning with, for example, string part of the orchestra in the start of the song, because I will make it later in the chorus,
Yeah.
in the most crazy part of the song.
I
So
see.
yeah,
I see.
but I think I should start with the craziest part because it will be easier later. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Just a second.
The only thing that I'm not completely уверен, confident, in all these instruments. So it a bit randomly now too. So yeah.
Yeah, I see. All right, cool. So let's continue this thing. So, all right. Now, remember that you can always mute some things. This is a really cool idea. So perhaps one of the things you can do is to, just to, once you set up something, just mute it and then see if it has like any epicness when you remove it or when you add it back. Just like, using basically the mute button is going to be really useful just to know like, hey, did I really exaggerated this or not? Just that's obvious. I just wanted to put it there because
I'm sorry. The small question: if we're talking about mixing, we're talking only about the volume or all the techniques, like you said before, panning and some plugins.
You will see
because if we're talking only about the volume, so I start with the biggest part always.
Yes. Okay.
Sure, but it's not the only stage of.
I lost the custom of like making a first balance of my mix before I start. I lost that custom and I want to return it back after these readings. So so this is more aimed towards me than towards you, because it seems that you haven't lost this custom of making this first balance. And that first balance includes a little bit of processing, but not a lot. You will see it in a minute. We're going to continue. So let me just give me a sec to sorry, I was saying some bullshit here because I didn't read this properly and I was a bit lost in my slide. What I'm trying to say is that with this slide is that, let's say that you have chorus 4, you want chorus to be the biggest one, and you have chorus 1, 2, and 3, and maybe you have like, let's say that you have 5 elements of percussion. Perk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So obviously you can do this thing, which is like the first chorus only has percussion 1, the second chorus has percussion 1 and 2, the third chorus has percussion 1, 2, 3, etc. So you can be muting elements retroactively. Like you started with your chorus 4, the biggest one, and then when you go back to the previous one, you want to make it smaller, you can mute a couple of elements. That's what I mean, and that they will appear later. So it's a bit of a production decision. And look at this. This is, I love these moments because that's why I put it in red. And there are some moments in this book that I'm finding out that I think are really important to share with you, because there are all these questions that come to our minds, which we don't know like the proper answer to them, because we are not so confident. We're not such Grammy winner engineers and stuff like that. And so we don't know what's the limits of production and mixing, for example, like where does mixing ends and when their production starts, like what's the kind of difference between that. And so you see, this is a commentary by an engineer called Jimmy Douglas. Look, mixers make production decisions all the time, and I add music to people's records when it's not finished or done correctly. In my work as a mixer, I am a finisher. That's what I do.
Agreed.
Me too, a lot.
100%.
And it happens a lot that I'm mixing and I end up adding a synth or something.
Yes.
Because it just needs something and it's the best way. So this gives us confidence that we can do production while we're mixing too. It's not great, but if it's needed, if it's gonna make the whole thing better, then that's what we should do. So there is a guy called Jason Joshua, confirms this approach. Once you get into the upper echelons of mixer, like the biggest mixing engineers, you're being paid for your taste. You're not hired just to make a rough mix sounds better. You're the last line of defense creatively, and you're expected to improve the record. It's your job to change things. So feel free. This is because this moment here, when you can mute elements, you're doing production. So feel free to do production if that's what's going to make the mix better. So then we go like, all right, where do we start? Let's start with the most important instrument. So these are some thoughts about starting with the most important instrument. So there are some guys, like these guys here. These are just, and I love that we have these names. I mean, in my wildest dreams, like maybe one day you guys will check out who are these people and listen to their mixes and stuff. We have a couple of like all-star engineers in our wall of all-star engineers that we have discussed them already, but there are more in these presentations. Like we never spoke about Censo Townshend or Rob Claremont and whatever. So obviously it would be cool if you guys check these guys out a bit and see what they're doing. But anyways, these guys, they work on everything simultaneously from the beginning. They don't have a hierarchy. Just go put all the tracks in, and they don't solo anything. They just go and mix. Alexander Perfiliev mixes like that too, by the way. Like I have been in the room mixing with him, and he just goes, puts everything at the same time, and then starts working. I mean, of course, it's not randomly, but he doesn't work like I, which is like I isolate the vocals and then I hear the vocals alone, and then I go and I add everything up. But other people like these guys, Mike Link, Jack Douglas, Andy Jones, Tom Lord Alge, Alan Parson, Tony Visconti, just they build the thing by stages like I do, or most likely you do. They start with one instrument in isolation, and they add other elements until the complete mix is happening. So there is this guy called Joe Ciccarelli, who gives this idea, which is like it's a matter of finding out what's the center of the song and what makes the song tick, and then you sometimes will end up building a song around the rhythm, sometimes you will build in the song around the vocals. So I have proposed to you a top-down approach, which that's what I have been doing with you until now, which is like start with the vocals and then go backwards. And I guess that after this lecture I'm gonna refine that and to say more like you have to discover what's the core of the song, and you have to start with the core of the song. Usually, because many of the things that we mix are pop songs, the vocals are going to be the top element, and so you're going to start with the vocals. But maybe sometimes you're going to start, I don't know, from the percussion, because it's just like really the thing that gives the song its character. I don't know. The thing is to emphasize its sonic important. I mean, your evaluation, how important is sonically, more than how important is musically. Like, I mean, this was a sentence that for me was a bit controversial. Like what they are trying to say is that for you it's more important to think about the audio characteristics or something rather than the role in the song. I don't know if I agree with that, but I put it there because that's the opinion of these guys, and I just wanted to share it with you and to have a discussion. So what I mean is that, let me just rephrase this in case to make the point clear. Like, let's say that there is a guitar fuzz that is super rich and super important in the waveform, the final waveform that is going to be produced when you make the song. And your evaluation of its importance maybe is going to be a little bit less connected to the structure of the song and more rather to the fact that this thing is huge and the sonic qualities of it are really rich, and so that becomes some element that you want to work in very carefully. I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think that it's more like a musical game. You know, is that an important little solo of the fuzz guitar? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna focus on it. If it's not important for the song structure, I'm gonna focus on something else first. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Yeah. They said this. The thing to emphasize is that it is sonic importance when you want to be evaluating rather than musical importance. I think that you should be evaluating musical importance, but that's a different opinion. This is a case, you know, he's saying like, hey, there are these vocal lead parts. They are really important, but okay, I see the point. I see the point here. Kind of like these two points relate with each other. And I guess that I'm gonna modify this so it's more comprehensive and more logic. Like, there is a contrast between music importance and sonic importance. So you will see what I mean. Let me just put this back in purple. So you see, like, let's read this guy down here. A common case in point is in the lead vocals parts, which maybe they are the most important sonic element, obviously, but sorry, musical element, obviously, in a song, but maybe in terms of how much volume they occupy in the mix, it's not so pressing or so important. Think about it. You know this artist Dido?
No.
No.
I'm sure you know it. Like, I'm sure you know her because it's super annoying, and it was like all over the world many years ago. Like, it was like a huge Dido, this girl. There was a song with Eminem, very famous, like with Eminem. This like it's super old stuff. Of course, it is super old, but I'm sure that you have seen this like in some moment of your life. No, never.
Play the music, please. Yeah.
You see, like, it's so huge, so famous. I just sang this thing and you guys were both like, fuck yeah. So you see, like, her vocals are really like not sonically demanding. They're very like light on the side, and this is still the most important element of the song, her vocals, but it's not the most predominant sonic element.
How can you explain the word sonic?
Sonic, it's acoustic or I mean, it means audio.
Like
It means
wave.
yeah. It means like for example, imagine that you record my voice, and I'm saying hello just like that, hello man, and then you record a fuzz guitar solo. Like, the fuzz guitar solo is more sonically rich. It's more, it has more harmonics, overtones than my voice. So that's what I mean. So there is a contrast between music importance and sonic importance, and this balance needs to be this relationship must be carefully considered, I guess. Like, it is sonic importance that should be your first priority. And a good example is the fact that lead vocal parts sometimes are obviously the most important musical element, but they're not necessarily the most rich sonic element. That's kind of what it means there. And you need to not to just put Dido's vocals like to become huge just because you think that's the most important musical element. That's what I mean. Like, sometimes the most important musical element needs to be not so predominant, even though it's the most important musical element. That's a very fine balance there.
I think sorry.
Please.
In some genres, for example, some rock genres, for example, let's take shoegaze or something like this. The vocals is like not the most important part. They usually are very quiet and very reverbed and all the stuff. But it's depending on the genre.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
You just should understand like the rules of the genre you mixing.
Exactly. So building up your mix one instrument at a time in order of importance means that you avoid the problem of running out of space for everything. And here is where I wanted to put a little call to old slides of mine. Reminder. We discussed, I just didn't do it when I was building the presentation, and I regret that. Discussed let's say step by step guide on how to balance element by element on the previous year. To see that, please go here. Let me just put you, I wanted to put you this presentation there in case you want to see it again or whatever. It's like lead to Rome. It's like exploring paths that lead to Rome. It should be this one is the best version that I have of this presentation. It's like an improved version of what I did with you guys last year. So I just want to remind you, and that's not what this course is about. The way I see this course, this is, I told you this at the beginning of this course, it's like there is the mixing and mastering course that I give on the year 2, and then on the year 3 I give the boring mixing and mastering course, which is more like a philosophical thing. That's why we mix so little. It's more like a philosophical thing, because last year theoretically we mixed a lot. I know that this course last year could have been better, but I mean, I'm trying to build my strategies as a teacher. So year 1 is full of it's full of know-how, and year 2 is full of like how to become a pro kind of thing. But if you want to go back to this know-how, I remind you that in here, you see there is a like a count of the steps, and it's very clear. Like first you do combination, then you tune, then you do gain staging, then you load your mix box, then you mix drums, bass, guitars. That's the bottom up or the top down approach. And then there is this like very clear instructions. That's what I mean. Mute everything, put a meter on the master, solo the vocals, go through the moment. So if you wanna return to this and see it again, you see it, you know it's there, but that's not what this course is kind of about. So this course assumes that you know those steps already. That's what I mean. But it's there in case you need it. So if a big vocal sound is important to you, then it's a waste of time to spend hours trying to pack to your mix full Godzilla grade rhythm guitars before you add the big vocals. So the meaning is that, of course, if you're going to work and your vocals, your song requires a big vocal sound, it's better to sound out your big vocals and then start adding off everything later. When you do fade up the vocal, it'll be fighting for its life against a wall of guitars. I mean, let me organize this idea better. What Mike Senior is trying to tell us is like, let's say that your vocals are the most important element of your song. Don't start by mixing your guitars, because then when you put your vocals in, they're going to be fighting against a wall of guitars, and you're going to have to undo a lot of the processing you did for the guitars before. And so it's just better to start with the vocals. That's obvious, and that's how we work, and I don't have to emphasize that point. If every part you fade up is less important sonically than what before, like what this means is like that. Okay, you added the vocals, you started with your huge vocals, then you added your guitars, and then you have a pyramid, and you're gonna be adding other stuff like progressively up. So because your vocals are eating a lot of the space, and then the guitars are eating a lot of the space, and then you reach to the synths, for example, and at this point you have a clear understanding of how much space you really have to add more elements. I hope that you understand what I mean. Like, the cool thing about starting from the most important element is that when you reach to the least important elements, you have a pretty clear expectation of how much space you have for them, and that's really important to avoid cluttering things up. There are some other significant advantages of this. So, these guys, what I'm going to tell you right now, it's super important, okay? And I have said this in the past, and I remember I missed Denis Siganov in the course a lot, really. I love this kind of like opposition and these fights and this lack of understanding, not lack of understanding, sorry. I love when a student just doesn't believe in you. And Dima, you do this a lot too, and I love this. I love when a student just tells you, no, I don't agree. And I just love this so much because I learn a lot. And with Denis Siganov, we had two kind of like encounters. One was this thing that I told you about the faders and the gain plugin. We're going to see this today. And the second one was also about processing, that I was always saying like, man, like it's not good to over process things because the computer overcooks them. And he kind of had a bit of a feeling of like, no, computers are just great and they can add more processing and everything is going to stay the same. Now, these guys really don't agree, and I'm really happy to be redeemed in that sense. There are some other significant advantages of this methodology from small studio user perspective. It is very easy to put 15 plugins on a track in most DAWs, and overprocessing is an ever-present problem for software users. Here is why. All plugins have side effects. Remember, I showed you what happens when you run like a tuning plugin on a track, and then you will see that the track gets affected even though there's no tuning happening. The same happens with all other plugins. They're really not perfect. And the less processing you can use to solve a problem, the smoother the final mix is generally going to sound. There is a guy called Justin Nybank. He says, the thing that I've learned is to do as little as is humanly possible, because when the computer has to work that much harder because you piled up lots of plugins, the sound seems to get smaller and smaller. And I agree so much with these words, like smaller and smaller. It's so true. Like things.
Bro,
Da.
do you mean applying these plugins like one by one, or does it also affects like, for example, you applied 10 plugins, you flatten it, and then
Yeah, man. Yeah, of course.
What
Because
do
the
you mean?
problem, yeah, it doesn't matter if you flatten it. It's not because
yeah,
they're
I
acting
see.
simultaneously. It's
Uh-huh.
just like, I was thinking about this the other day. The other day, I grabbed a video file that the film director sent me, and my Pro Tools couldn't read the format of that video file, so I changed the format of it. You follow me, right?
Yes.
I mean that it was like a .mp4, and I re-render it to .mov. And I was thinking, like, the original video file was applied compression, and I'm talking about data compression, and I'm applying now data compression to the data compressed file. Are you following me there? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Just a second. I think I need to take this call. It's at доставка, I think. Just a moment. Алло. Да, доставка. Это какая компания? Да, мы здесь дома. Когда вы будете? Окей, хорошо, просто, дам домофон 268. Хорошо, да, я сейчас работаю чуть-чуть, но я на месте. Давайте, до свидания. I think the second доставка is here. I got the two доставкas at the same time. Алло? Да, здравствуйте. Доставка, да? Хорошо, отлично, спасибо. Да, мы на место. Давай, до свидания. Ага. Okay, guys. So, back to you.
Bro, I definitely got this because I had a client that asked me to mix vocals with the MP3.
Yeah, you see, and look, so I'm making a parallel idea here, which is like, imagine that you what's the name? That you are putting like a Waves Tune plugin, and then you put like a Saturn, and then you put a multiband compressor, and then you put an EQ. Like, there is some data processing and data compression happening at each one of those stages, so you're deteriorating the quality of the signal. And if you render it, it doesn't matter. You just got it rendered now.
I can give the very root but straight example. Someday I was mixing a song with a lot of reverb, pant reverb and all this shit. So there was like a lot of reverb plugins on a lot of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So and the end of the mix, at some point where is silence in the song, I found why the fuck there is so much noise in the mix. And after like a lot of time, I found that the reverb plugin, it was vintage reverb plugin, he has a noise. So it's a very root example, because the noise in this plugin, the level of the noise in this plugin is high, but if you're like mixing with not the like plugins with pre-built noise because it's vintage, but every plugin has some negative point, and maybe the errors in the sound managing. So if you add the 100 of these plugins, it will be kinda like the high level of noise.
Yes, I agree 100%. 100% agree. So yeah, that's how we are, and in this sense, and it's important to try to minimize the amount of processing that you have around. That's for sure.
Bro, I got a quick question in my mind. Like, so sometimes I ask client to send me a multi-track without any effects. Do you do this as well? Like,
sure. My rule is that I ask them to send me both.
Yes, I do this.
And then I start with the processed one, because I'm gonna save some time. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
And then if I need to, I grab the
Yeah,
what's the name?
same.
The
Same,
raw
same,
one.
yeah.
I add the raw one later. So yeah, the same as you guys. Okay. Let me see. When you mix the most important instruments at first, you will find yourself in a situation where your most important instruments, you see, this is connected to the amount of plugins that you use. Your most important instruments will be more likely to receive your best quality plugins, and the lost quality will be suffered by the things that are kind of on the sides, not at the center. So it's really important to start with the most important instrument because you will use your better quality plugins there. For example, when you have DSP cards and things like that, like what. And then the shittier plugins will be used for things that are less important. So that's really obvious and really cool. Suggestions. Write a list of all the instruments in order of importance. Could be useful. You know, you sit down, you hear all this thing, and you're like, acoustic guitar goes last. Okay, whatever. Of course, a client's rough mix can also be useful in this respect. And then sometimes I'm terrible at this, and I kind of ignore the client mix like in the first 3 sessions because I'm stupid. It's not only for any other reason rather than I'm stupid. And then in session 3, I hear the rough mix. Actually, I very recently lost a client because of this, to be honest with you. Like, it was like a week ago or something. Like, they sent me the reference mix, and I heard it like after a week only. And that was a big mistake of mine. Because sometimes my arrogant self just thinks, nah, whatever, this reference mix, these guys don't know what they're doing. And that reference mix was awesome. It was great. And if I would have heard from the beginning, I would have not lost the client. But I lost them. They went somewhere else. They didn't like my mix and they continued, and that was it. That's how it was. But I learned a lot. And actually in that mix, guys, I need to talk to you about that project for a bit. I discovered that did I mention to you about my HD 650s, about my Sennheisers or not?
No.
Well, it turns out that they had the top end blown up. Like, I mean, I didn't have any high end kind of in my monitoring at all. Not at all, but I mean, I realized this while making this mix. I started making this whole project with my Sennheiser's HD 650s, like I usually do. And in the middle of...
Yeah, remember that. You said that, yeah.
In the middle, maybe I said it in a class that Dima was not here or something. Like, and in the middle of the thing, I was like, I put my other headphones and the DT77 Pro, and I was like, holy shit, like, why there is so much top end? And actually, I realized this was in DTH, actually. I monitored the mix in DTH, and I was like, fuck, but you know that I don't trust the rooms in DTH so much, so I was like, like, what is going on? And then I realized this. So the reason why I'm telling you this is like nowadays, I really, really not only recommend, but I urge you need to have 2 pairs of headphones. It's not optional anymore.
Sorry, the small thing that 770 Pro has too much high-end.
Yes, yes, you're right about this. But for sure, I got to have. I eventually bought a fresh pair of HD 650s. I sold my old, and in Gavito I was a bit hitry. I called them like gaming headphones. So I was just like, I mean, to game it's okay, you don't care like so much, but and I sold them really quickly. I sold them like in a day. It was really fast to sell them. And I got a new pair, but for a moment I had the 2 pairs, the old one and the new one, here at home. So I did an AB with them, and it was incredible. So I think it's not optional. You need to have 2 pairs of headphones. A pair of headphones for everyday use, and then a pair of headphones that are there and you never use them. Only it's a critical mixing moment. You plug them and you use them because they really get tired very fast. I recommend you to go in our community here in the unofficial Epic and unofficial music world. There is an article that I posted a while ago. Maybe I don't think that we discussed it in this class. It's an article about Andrew Schweppes mixing with headphones, and at the beginning he mentioned something really casually, like for 2 seconds, like, yeah, just know I change headphones every 2 years. And that's really key thing. Like, we cannot be having the same headphones for more than 2 years because they really get damaged and they get tired. So okay, suggestions. Write a list of instruments in order of importance and use the rough mix. And the reason why I started talking to you about the rough mix is because in that client I had 2 mistakes. That's why I lost the client. Mistake 1, I started with the headphones damaged. Mistake 2. I didn't hear the rough mix early and I fucked it up. Not all element needs to be the same amount of time allocation, obviously. Dedicate more time for what's more important. Abandon some nuance. Let me change this word here to nuance. Abandon some nuance. Nuance. Right. Where it's not going to be appreciated. Sometimes, and I can imagine, I mean, I'm sorry, Andruja, but I was imagining that when I was writing this thing, I was imagining that maybe this is something, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I just, for some reason, I could imagine that your type of personality could get in this problem, and I get the same problem too. It's like, there is this tiny detail that is important to me, and I know that it's not important to the client. And I still spent an hour, 2 hours doing that. And it's like, come on, like, you know that they are not going to care about this. You care, but they don't care. Like, it's better to focus on what they care, because you have a certain amount of time, and the more time you spend doing something, the less money you make.
A couple of perfectionists
Yeah.
died just now.
Exactly. So, okay, now we're going to go to some simple balancing tasks. I'm going to take a micro run to give to Anya. I need to give to Anya the debit card that she needs to pay with, because the Dostavka will be here in a second. And I will be back in under 2 minutes. Just give me 1 second and I'll be right back.
Okay.
So here we are, guys. I'm ready. So simple balancing task. So this is what Mike Senior considers to be part of the balancing process. Interesting. Starts with stereo panning. Should be sorted as early as possible. It's impossible to judge the effectiveness of a mix in mono. Are you guys there, by the way? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, phase coherence. We talk a lot about this already. This needs to be sorted out before starting. Low frequency rubbish, he calls it like that, needs to be removed as early as possible. Spill, bleed, leakage needs to be controlled as much as possible. Whatever brand of high pass, this is thoughts about high pass filters. Whatever brand of high pass filters you use, the main concern is to set off the cutoff frequency in the right place. And so it's like, okay, but how do you know what's the right place? And here is a commentary about Roger Nichols. And dude, like, I'm sorry, I of course confess to you guys that every time I deliver a course for the first time, I'm super nervous about it because I have never done this. And so I'm like, will it be good? Will it be bad? Will this lecture will be a piece of shit? And then I get very excited because I see that when the thing goes at least how I think is right, I get excited because you see, like, this course is really to close all those little questions that we have that we don't know if it's our idea or if other people have realized this too. Because even when I give you lectures about my own experience, sometimes I wonder, like, who the fuck am I to say that this should be like that? And I'm really happy to find other people that have reached the same conclusions or other people that have reached a different conclusion or telling you something different, telling us something different to do. Look at what this guy Roger Nichols is saying. So the question is, how do you know when is a good moment to stop your low pass, your high pass cutoff frequency? My rule is, if you can't hear it, you don't need it. Turn on the filter, start raising the frequency slowly until you can hear a change in sound in the low end of the acoustic guitar. Now reduce that frequency about 15%. So it's a kind of like, oh, I don't hear it. Like like you put the cut, you start moving, then you hear the cut, and then you move a little bit to the back. If you don't trust your monitoring, then use an imager as a complement for your decisions.
Yeah, small thing about mixing in headphones because
sure, because
you can cut the frequencies that you can't hear. No, it's about the low frequencies mostly. Yeah.
Correct.
You should consider it too.
Correct. That's super correct. So, a cool thought on stereo panning. Here we're going to have a couple of cool thoughts on stereo panning. This is really cool, man, and I'm honest with you, I have never thought about this. When you are in a jazz club or in a concert, you don't hear drums in stereo, really. You don't hear like the toms moving from the left, like to the right. Because this is an experience that only the drummers have. So that's an important thing to consider. I mean, it is not mandatory that you have to spread out your toms like from super left to super right, or your right has to be here. It all depends on how much you want to make this from the perspective of the drummer. I like to put people inside songs, and I play drums, so that's why I kind of like to make things super exaggerated like that. But some engineers don't like to do this and don't pan so hard things like so stylized and exaggerated. This is really cool thought. And by the way, guys, I want to tell you, my Christmas present to myself was a vinyl player. And I mean, I have this now problem, which is like I cannot buy Bitcoin anymore because I'm buying vinyls every 5 minutes. Man, it's so great. Do you guys have a vinyl player?
No.
What?
Like, vinyl player.
Yes, of course.
Great.
Man.
Yeah, well, and you know
it's
this
an
feeling.
addiction. It's a fucking addiction.
Yeah,
bro.
and it's so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, when you have like the family, for example, when you're alone, it's equally cool. But when I'm telling you, like when you have the family and it's like, okay, guys, let's hear a record. You know, you put the record, and the kids are like, wow, like what's happening? And then you press play, and there's no internet, no nothing. It's such a pleasant thing. Like the culture of the vinyl is so important, and we need to cherish it a lot. And there are a whole bunch of considerations of mixing when you're gonna mix something, and when it's gonna end up in a vinyl. And I like that in this course we're picking a lot of those things. And by the way, before I go to read and to continue this, I want to tell you that we are so traumatized about the digital era that I was listening to a vinyl the other day and my phone rang, somebody called me, and I was like, oh fuck, like the music didn't stop. Like somebody called me and the music didn't stop. Like because I was hearing notes from the phone and it was like fuck, like we're so badly used to. Anyways, look at this. Cool thought on stereo panning. Off-center bass can have a problem when pressing your music to vinyl, because imagine the system is carving a waveform, and if you have too much bass on the right channel, like then that thing can affect the groove that is next to it. You see?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. Of course, I never thought about that. And as a little detail, I put 1 parenthesis here and 2 parentheses here. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Did you get it? Okay, sorry. Bad joke, but anyway. Some little detail there. It's an Easter egg. Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Sorry, it's very stupid, but anyways. So, cool thought on stereo panning. So, this is what's called, I mean, I do this a lot, extremely a lot, and it's really important. So, opposition panning. So, the meaning is like, obviously, if you kind of want to achieve a balance, even though you're moving some things to the left. So, it's like, if I'm going to have this guitar solo on the left, there should be a synth solo on the right that compensates for that, basically. And that's something that I do a lot, and it's important. So how they see it, they call it opposition panning. If an important mono instrument is panned on one side, then another instrument with similar musical function should be panned on the other side. Opposition panning will provide you with a stereo width and interest, but without pulling out the overall stereo picture and not fucking up your center.
But sorry, what's the reason for this? What about old school rock mixing, where guitars were hard panned? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look. Obviously, I was meditating a lot about what you said when I was here in this point of that people perceive drums in stereo,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking something kind of like, I mean, I'm gonna make a parallel with video games right now. Like, imagine that. I mean, it's obvious that new school video games are very different than old school video games, right? And there is a whole theory and industry that developed of video games, and you cannot come out and make like now like just like this 2D Pong and expect it to be a hit. You see what I mean? So I really think that modern mixes are very different than vintage mixes, because the whole thing evolved just like the video game industry did. So
It's production related.
Yeah, it's
point,
production
yeah.
related already. Like, it's like when in the past, when people were conceiving songs, they were not thinking like that, like left, right, front, back, like. And that being said, I love when there are these songs which have like a drum on the left and drums on the right. Obviously, this is not like a rule, but certainly it's cool to consider this, you know.
Why asking? Because before that we said about the vinyl player and that you cannot like technically
but also,
pan the bass and vinyl. That's why I'm asking.
But also it's a matter of loudness. Like, those mixes were 10 times less loud. And so the grooves that are being carved physically in the vinyl are not so aggressive, you could say it like that. But nowadays the mixes are huge, and they're expected to be huge, and it's a bit different. And maybe, and I'm talking with a bit of ignorance because I really don't know, but maybe there were problems in the past when rendering vinyls. So I don't know. So okay, we're now in setting up the levels point. So, okay, by the way, I'm so sorry. I'm still with this problem of the stuff. I need to tell one thing to Anya. I'm so sorry. I'll be back. This will be really fast. Millie, I forgot there will be another delivery. There will be another delivery, though. You don't have to pay. Okay, great. Very good. That's all, guys. I'm here back. Yeah. All right, so setting up the levels. Let's go. So this is what they think about when they're setting up the level. Unfortunately, I was wanting them to tell us a certain number, you know, just like I told you in the past, like aim for minus 15 dBFS, blah, blah, blah. But they don't. Unfortunately, they don't do this. I was really hoping for that so I can compare with my own experience, but whatever. Let's see. So usually I have all the levers, faders at 0, And here it is, bro. Here it is what I was telling you about Denis Siganov.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna actually paint it in purple. I usually leave all faders at 0 and put a gain plugin before the end of the channel to make large gain corrections, yet leaving all the faders at zero. This is actually me saying that. It's not Mike Sr. So let me put it here like Leo. Up. What the fuck? Leo. I usually... And then Mike Sr. vindicated this idea and provided a good reason. Almost all fader has their best control resolution around the unity gain position. You see? Did you understood what that means?
No, not completely.
Okay, I'm gonna show you. That's a thing, and I didn't know when I made this choice. I made this choice kind of intuitively.
The
Your
problem
voice,
is sound, yeah.
Ah, it died, the sound? Now it's back?
Sample rate or
Fuck,
this one,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. So you hear me badly now, yeah? You hear me badly. I'm gonna get out of the call 1 second and come back. Is it fixed?
Yeah.
Fixed? Okay. Look, what's going on is this, man. I reached to this
Just
conclusion.
start the presentation.
No, the presentation is there. Show the
no,
screen. Sorry. I know what you mean. Sorry. And this thing, it's really, really clever. And I really reached to that conclusion on my own, but without understanding why, kind of. It was just like an intuitive thing. You see, like, my lead vocals here. Do you see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
My lead vocals here are, the faders are in 0. But then I have a relay there that it's at minus 4.3.
Mm-hmm.
So I left the fader in 0. Now, if I expand this thing, if later I need to make some automation,
Mm-hmm.
the region around 0 has a higher resolution of the automation than the region. You see, like, I can go here in minus 0.4 dBs and stuff, and I can have a finer tuning capacities. When I am down here, because of the way the scale is done, you see, like here it's like 3 decibels only, you see, but down here it's like 10.
Mm-hmm.
So you have more finer capacity of doing fine automation when you're close to 0.
Yeah.
Because of the way the scale of the DBFS is laid out. It starts like 3 decibels, then it starts like 5, you see? The jump is like 5, then the jump is 10. So if I in the graphic user interface here, if I move this thing a little bit, I'm moving like 5 dBs or something. But if I move it a little bit here, I'm moving 1.5 dBs. So that's a good argument, like in favor of this thing that I was proposing, you know. And then you can do something like, you see, like you cut the lead vocals here 20 decibels, and then you can do fine automation here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool that I finally got a good answer. I don't know if the well, I hope that the audio is not gonna get crappy. Let's see. I just really don't want to save this because it would be a catastrophe.
It's okay.
It's okay, great. All right, so that's done. So there is this guy Naibank as well. Like balance is way more important than EQ or automation, but some people give it up just a half an hour or so. You have to think of balance first. You want the track loud enough so you can hear all the things that you really love about individual sound. On the other hand, you need to keep the track loud enough in the mix so it doesn't obscure the merits of other more important instruments. They mean like, I mean that when they say track, they're talking about daroshka again. So you want the daroshki to be loud enough so you can hear what you love about that thing. But on the other hand, don't put it so loud because it will obscure other things. Many engineers suggest to bring the elements where you think it should be, and then this is a cool idea. Like you put the element, let's say, oh, I'm listening, I have a violin track, I'm gonna listen to the violin track, I'm gonna turn up the fader or the trim or whatever until I like it, and then I'm gonna mute it and mute it back. And then you're gonna be able to compare better if it's too loud or not. It's a good idea. And of course, don't do leveling in isolation, meaning like, I mean, you cannot decide the level of the snare without the kick. I mean, it's really obvious, but anyways. Make 2 moves before you decide something is ready. This is a really cool, clever idea. If you're not sure of something, you just put the level and you're like, okay, this is how I think it should be. Then, remember that. Turn the bass 1 dB up and listen. Does it sound better? Then do the opposite. Turn it down 1 dB and assess. Kind of like once you reach to a point, move 1 dB up, 1 dB down, and maybe you will find that the point that you had chosen was too much or too little by doing a little bit extra just to make sure to check. This is really cool idea, guys. This is super cool, and I have never done this, and I will start doing this forever from today. Check this out. Try it. I call it, I mean, it's not my approach, but I put it a name because they didn't call it like that. Try the up-down approach. So turn all the fader or whatever you are using to make level all the way down, and then turn it up until you hear the thing. Great. We have talked about this before, and that's awesome. Mark that position. So just notice what's that position was. And then, let me just put this in underline. And then do the opposite. Then turn it up very high and start turning it down until you find a position that you like. And then compare the 2 points that you arrived to. You see?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Ah?
No, why?
No. No, it's like, imagine, you wanna, let's, you see my hands there?
Yeah.
You see my hands? So you want, let's say that this is a fader here, and you're like, the fader is here, and you're like, okay, let me check how loud this should be. So I'm gonna turn that channel all the way to 0, and then I'm gonna start turning it up. And then you're like, it turns out that I reached this point, and this is where I like it. Okay, now let me do it the other way around. I'm gonna put it
Like
very
what?
loud.
Like what? What do you like?
Yeah, what do you like? Yeah. And then
you said until I like. What you like?
Until you find that the balance correct. I mean, it's like I'm playing a whole song. There is a violin element, and now it's the moment to add that violin element to my song. So then I'm gonna turn it down to 0, turn it up, and I see like, I like this level. Great. Now the next step would be to try the opposite way. Instead of starting from 0, start from very loud, and then turn it down. And then compare the 2 results. It's like, let's say, do you understand what I mean? Do I need to explain it or?
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Yeah. Okay, great. So turn all the faders all the way down and start bringing them up until you hear the element. Mark that position. It's like, that was minus 17. Then turn the element super loud and bring it down till you hear it. Is it the same position you recorded when you were doing from the bottom up? Maybe yes, maybe not. Like, it's a good idea. Obviously, you need to use your main and secondary listening systems, so you can have like a different angle of the whole situation. Nowadays, like I told you, I don't think it's optional to have 2 pairs of headphones. Unfortunately, it's a big investment for us, but I think we need to have 2 mixing grade headphones, and so you can, if you're gonna be working from home, so you can jump between headphone A and B. Nowadays, I'm mixing like the tracks half in one pair of headphones and half in another one. If you set your level to your beloved level, and then across the song, the track you're focusing your attention on disappears, this is an indicator that the processing is needed in the track. So what do I mean? You have the whole multi-track recording, you put everything, make a static balance of everything, and then press play. And guys, I'm going to show you today a sentence that will make you understand compression, I think, in another point of view. You will see what I mean. It's really cool. So you run the whole tracks like from beginning to end, and then you see like, wow, the acoustic guitar was very clear in the first verse, but it was not very clear in the second verse. So that's an indication that this track needs processing. When you can leave a track and you can press play from the beginning to the end and you don't feel the need to make automation, that's an indication that this track, maybe you don't need to touch that track. But the opposite is true. If you hear the whole thing and then you think like, fuck, that track kind of disappeared a little bit, and then I lost it, that means that that track maybe needs a bit of processing. They are saying this: develop the confidence to leave tracks unprocessed if they are already balanced in a static fader situation. This is crucial mixing decision in its own right, and incidentally, it's one that experienced engineers tend to arrive at much more often than rookies do. That's why I started that quote that we started the lecture from was coming from this part of the book. It's like, we need to be confident enough to say that thing doesn't need processing, and that's all. One of the smartest things a mixer can do is to leave stuff alone. That's how the whole thing started. So, basically, I mean, let me just like piece this out because it's too much text. I need to clean it a little bit. You are listening to some, that's what I was saying before, like, yeah, let me just, this is really important. This is the sentence I was telling you that I think it changes your way of how you will see compression after that sentence. Imagine, you try to set the level of a 8-note rhythm guitar. And sometimes across your song, I'm talking about, of course, without automation. Like you're here in a moment when there is no automation happening yet. You put everything, put all your faders to 0, made a balance, press play, heard the whole thing. And then there is this 8-rhythm guitar. Some parts of that performance, it's easier to hear in the mix, and other ones are super loud. So you have a constant feeling of tweaking the fader. This is so cool because we tend to see dynamic range like something that should always be very large. I mean, we're kind of indoctrinated to think like dynamic range has always to be very massive. But sometimes your dynamic range is too big. So what your mix is trying to tell you is that the difference level between the loudest and the softest chords is too loud. Or to translate in text talk, the dynamic range is too wide. So you're going to have to compress the dynamic range. That's what the fucking compressor is for. So that's really clever way of seeing it. I don't know if you feel the power of that sentence, the punch of that sentence, but I have never heard it so well articulated. Like, it's time to reduce the dynamic range. Because we always are said, you need to expand the dynamic range. And I stand on that conclusion. Of course, we want to have a large dynamic range. But there are cases when shrinking the dynamic range is what you need to do, and that's why you use compression for. This is a very fancy way to say, hey, if you play the song and the guitar disappears sometimes, you're going to have to compress it. Obviously, that's obvious, and you know it. But I really like, it's very pro way to see it like this. Your mix is trying to tell you that the difference level between the loudest and the softest chord is too loud, or the dynamic range is too wide. You need to shrink it with compression. That's great. We're almost done, by the way, guys. Actually, this is the last slide. By the time you fended your acoustic guitar to the point we can hear a nice sparkle up, let me see. Okay. You know, it happens a lot that, let's say that you're a song that is in B flat. Let me see, like B sharp. Let me see something like C sharp, frequency. Just quickly to see what's the frequencies of C sharp. So I don't know. Let's say that you're doing a song in C sharp and C sharp major, and when the chord C is being played, you get like a boost on frequencies that just hits you in the head a little bit, because the whole song is like kind of resonant in that set of frequencies. That's a big problem. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It happens a lot with bass guitars. Yeah. And that's, I mean, in my opinion, that's why dynamic EQs are for, you know. And we will discuss how to use that, but this is what the second part is saying. Like, by the time you faded up the acoustic guitar to the point where you can hear all the nice things, then there are these things that are booming and resonant that are connected to the notes that you're playing. You want to have a separate fader, he's calling it like that, joking, or a process that can help you to turn down that frequency range, and that will be done through equalization. So you see, we tend to mix, I don't know if you tend to mix like that, but I admit my own fuck-ups, and we tend to mix kind of like a hyperactive kid that is told to clean their room. You know, Sirius, clean up your room. And Sirius is like, ah, and he starts doing everything at the same time because he just want to get this task done, kind of. And what Mike Sr. and these pros are telling us is like, yo, wait a minute. Like, the thing you need to do is to make a basic balance first, run that basic balance, and let the mix tell you what needs to be processed. This is the important part of this lecture. Let the mix speak to you. You heard the whole thing and you're like, oh, look, like I heard the bass across the whole thing. I heard the kick across the whole thing. And after you make those conclusions, you will create a plan of what you need to process. I don't mix like that nowadays. I mix like Sirius being annoyed that I'm asking him to clean the room. It's like, fuck, I just want to do this. And then I go and I start doing process. You know, what for? And that's one of the beauties of this course, that it's a very, very selfish individual point of view, from my personal point of view. I get the chance to review all my old practice and become better and better and better because I get the chance to discuss these things with you. Luckily, I'm getting paid to do that, so I have time to prepare this and think. And if this fortunately can save you some time and help you to mix better, that would be awesome. So yeah, that's where we are now. I'm going to stop there so you can have 7 minutes to breathe before your next lecture. I'm sorry of what happened today, that there was no lecture. Yes, lecture. I'm really grateful that you came so we don't lose the momentum. Next week, like, I remind you something that is going to happen in the next month or so. We're going to move towards the second semester and you're going to start working with Ilya too. And Ilya will give you a different mixing course, totally different mixing course than me. So, and it will be more practical than what you're doing with me. With me, we have done a whole bunch of theory. I suspect if you guys allow this to happen, in my dreams, your lectures with Ilya will all happen in DTH. It's just like a moment between you, Ilya, you two and Ilya in DTH, where you will do a whole bunch of things with him practically in the studio. Because you guys did that with me in the last year, and it would be incredible if you can do that with Ilya now in DTH. So there will be a lot more practice in the second part of the course, which is the second semester. But now in this last month that we have, we're going to be doing like a little bit of theory and a lot more practice, just so you know, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And well, of course, make me my homeworks, please. I'm still waiting. Just go and do them, okay?
Yeah, I just booked the studio.
Yeah, I've noticed. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, guys, so let you go. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope it was useful in any way. And yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, bro, thank you. It was the lecture was actually refreshing.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I'm really
Agreed.
like I told you initially. I'm gonna stop the streaming. Like I told you initially, I'm very